Welcome to Whores Talk Horror.
We're not really whores. We just like wordplay.
Hello and welcome to Whores Talk Horror. I'm Sharon.
And I'm Melinda.
Today we have a super controversial topic to talk about. We are going to be discussing the film Halloween Kills. So if you have not seen the film, here is your warning now. Spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. We are going to be discussing everything. Joining us in our discussion today, we have one of our favorite guests. He is an award-winning voiceover actor and is one of the writers, directors, and producers of the amazing fan film and unofficial sequel to the original Black Christmas movie titled It's Me, Billy. He is also a huge fan of the original Halloween movie and has made many Halloween fan films, which is exactly why I wanted him to come on the show and talk about this with us. So please welcome back to the show, Dave McRae.
Thank you very much, ladies, for having me on. I thought you were going to say, when you first began, you were going to say, and we have a controversial guest today. And I was thinking, I'm controversial, really? Okay. No, but seriously, yeah. Thanks for having me on. This is great. I'm glad. Always happy to talk horror and Halloween, of course.
Yeah.
All right. So the way I think we're going to do the discussion, we're each going to go around quickly and just say, you love the film, you hated the film, it was okay. And then we're basically going to start from the beginning of the movie and kind of work our way through. You know, we'll talk about what we liked, disliked, you know, whatever you want to bring up. We're going to keep it somewhat organized and also civil. So no name calling, Mindy.
No, I'm good to go. I have things to talk about, but I can keep it civil. I just am really excited because Dave is like kind of a Halloween expert and Sharon, you're no slouch. And I'm kind of a newbie, really. I don't know the franchise as well, so I'm really excited about all of our perspectives on this and where this is going to take us.
Well, I was referring to the fact that the last time we recorded together when we did trivia, every time I got an answer right, you called me a bitch.
Well, that was a completely different circumstance.
So please don't call Dave a bitch.
Please don't call Dave a bitch.
It's all right.
All right, so Dave, start us off. Briefly, what did you think of the film?
Well, it's hard for me to just give a yay or a nay because I'm a very nuanced person. I will say I didn't hate it.
Okay.
But I didn't particularly like it. I liked aspects of it. I will say
Fair
that.
enough.
Okay.
Fair enough. Minnie?
I would agree with Dave, but I would probably say that I more hated it. But there were definitely aspects of it that I did like. And there's quite a bit that I had a lot of issues with. Mm-hmm. So that I'm going to have to go more towards hate. Sorry, Michael Myers.
All right, that's fair enough. I think my immediate reaction when I saw it in the theater afterwards, I said I loved it. So I guess, you know, I'll be the only one on that side of the table. Well, I did rewatch it last night, did not enjoy it as much. I don't know if it was because it was a theater experience or, I mean, we'll get into it more in our discussion, but it looked like you had something to say, Dave.
No, I was just going to say, I actually don't disagree with that assessment. I think it's because I don't know if we're going to get into it now. Are we going to get into it now?
Go for it.
Sure.
Okay. Well, I was just going to say that I had the chance of seeing Halloween 18 at the world premiere here in Toronto at TIFF. And so I got a chance to see it about 6 weeks before most people did. And I went in with extremely high expectations because you are making a direct sequel to the original film and the original film only. So there are certain character continuity and certain things that I expect to see carried over from that first movie into the sequel. Not a carbon copy, but something that was, you know, the way it's shot, the way it looks, certain lighting choices, the way Michael behaves, his MO, all that kind of stuff. And I was very disappointed when I walked out of Halloween 18. I didn't hate the movie. I still don't hate it. I think it's a good modern day horror film, but I don't particularly think it's a great Halloween movie in all the ways that, you know, in terms of, you know, Again, the way it looks, the way it's shot, the way Michael behaves. I thought 18 was largely void, not completely void, but largely void of any real suspense or, mood and atmosphere. It did have some, but that's how I felt. And I was like, I was disappointed. It was good. It was good. It was fine. But I don't know, it needed more of that thing. You know what I mean? When I think about it being a direct sequel to the original and the original only. So over the last 3 years, I was really tempering my expectations. And I know people tend to say that, and they don't really do it. I believe that people intend to do that. They want to do that, but then they get in the theater and the music begins, and then they're like, oh my God, here it is, and they just can't help themselves. So I was able to catch an early screening of Halloween Kills in Toronto with Bruce, only about 2 days before it was released to everybody. And so we went down. And I went in really I did my best. I'm just, I just want to watch this. I don't want to be disappointed again. I'm going to treat this like it's a ride. So it's like I'm on a ride at an amusement park, and whatever they throw at me, I'm just going to take. I'm not going to overanalyze. I'm not going to over-intellectualize. I'm just going to, take it as is. Because when you're on an amusement park ride, you're generally not nitpicking, well, he doesn't exactly look like him. No, you're just enjoying what it is. You understand that this is a haunted house, or it's a display, or it's somebody's Halloween display, and they're just dressed up as Michael, and it's like, well, he's a little, I mean, it is what it is. So that's how I wanted to treat it, and that's how I did. I did notice all the issues that I had with it on first watch, but I put them in the back of my head because I just wanted to enjoy the experience. And when we went to, myself and Bruce, afterwards, we were walking back to Dundas Square in Toronto, which is like Toronto's little Times Square. And we did a live video from there. And I said the same thing. I said, you know what? I really enjoyed it. I said, I had a good time. I had fun watching the movie. I had more fun watching Kills on first watch than I did 18. And I think that's largely because I had no expectations. And so anyways, I know that's a really long-winded way of saying I understand what Sharon is talking about, on that first watch, just kind of really having fun with it, and enjoying it and not overthinking it too much.
Mm-hmm. I just put my hand up just to be like,
yes,
on
Mindy.
that point. But I wanted to say that I actually watched it in 4K in my pajamas in my living room.
Right.
And I do think, had I had seen this movie in a packed theater with a bunch of hardcore Halloween fans that were there ready to scream and yell at the people about to get killed and all that, that would have been a much more fun experience for me. So I do think possibly viewing it at home by myself wasn't the best choice, but like you had also mentioned, there are just certain things that I couldn't get around and couldn't.
Yeah, and we'll get into all those things.
Yeah.
But yeah, to be fair, there was like 5 other people in the theater with Spencer and I. We went on like a Friday afternoon, but I went in with the same expectations that you just stated, Dave.
Right.
I also was like, I'm just gonna enjoy it. I'm gonna have fun, and they threw so many Easter eggs and nods to the original that I was like, yes. And so let's just get into all that right now.
I was gonna say they threw stuff. That's for damn sure.
They did.
All right. So Halloween Kills starts basically where the 2018 movie leaves off, but instead of starting with Laurie, Karen, Allison, or Michael, it starts with the more minor characters, Cameron, Oscar, who's hanging dead on the fence, and we learn that Deputy Hawkins is still alive. I personally was expecting it to open with the fire and seeing Michael escaping a fiery death, but it went into a different direction. How do both of you feel about the way the film opened? Dave, you go first.
I didn't mind how it opened, actually. I actually think that Hawkins, I'm glad he survived. Because I think Will Patton is a terrific character actor, and I think he is probably the best actor in this movie. I think he, even when he's saying absurd things, in terms of the dialogue that is asked of him to say,
right.
He's such a good character actor that you believe him. I can't say that for everybody else, but we'll talk about that later. So, it's a movie. Would he have survived? I got the impression that Dr. Sartain stabbed him in the jugular and that he probably would have bled out in a matter of minutes. So the chances of it being, he would have probably been dead if this was real life. But nonetheless, he was alive and he survived. And I didn't mind that. And then, of course, what he said there is that, evil must die, it must die, as he's kind of, camera, evil must die. And then we go right into the flashback. So I didn't mind it. It didn't bother me. At this point, I will say that the first, 15 minutes or so of the film, I think is pretty strong. And it's sort of after the flashback where it starts to kind of just this downward turn in terms of pacing and weird stuff, which of course we'll talk about. But I didn't mind how it opened, no.
I have one quick thing to say before you say what you thought of the opening. I will say that in nursing school, I was taught by one of my instructors that if you really want to kill someone quickly, you stab them in the carotid and not the jugular. They will bleed out much faster.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Well, excuse me, Miss Nurse.
I'm just saying, filmmakers might not know this, so maybe he was stabbed in the jugular, not the carotid, and that's why he survived.
That's a very good point. It's a very good point. No, it's a very good point. Thank you. It's good to know. Let me just write that down.
Or if you're ever being attacked by a Mike Myers-esque killer,
right.
You can remember that fact and save yourself.
Or maybe he speaks, I'm going to stab you here and not here because you bleed out faster. Yeah, that's great. That's that's it. Maybe that's a detail that or the writers were just like, no, we just want to bring him back.
Or they missed both arteries altogether, veins. Yeah,
entirely possible.
I think you both put way too much thought into it than the writers even did.
That's our job, Mindy. All right, Mindy, what did you think at the beginning?
So here's my first question for both of you, because I'm very familiar with the original Halloween, but it has been a minute since I've seen it. But Hawkins, in terms of, as far as we know, is to us a new character, right?
Yes. So I actually am going to get to that. If you just want to put a pin in that, because I have a whole...
Because the exposition, I get that, but I was like, he wasn't in the original,
well,
right?
Actually, you know what? I'll bring it up right now. So after the opening, where we're, reintroduced to Cameron, Oscar, Hawkins, they do the flashback scene to 78, and we learn a little bit more about who Hawkins is, because in Halloween 2018, Dr. Sartain says, quote, "Did you know Hawkins was the first responding deputy when Michael Myers was apprehended in 1978? End quote.
Right.
But we don't really learn anything else about him in that movie. So that's what fills in the backstory. That's what the whole flashback scene is about. And then you also have a nice cameo from Jim Cummings. Mm-hmm. There's a reference to the dead dog in the Myers house, which is a nod to the 78 film. Correct. And we also learn a bit more about Lonnie, who is also a character in the 78 film. What did you think about the flashback scene then, Dave?
In terms of the set design, I thought it was terrific. I thought it really felt like Halloween 1978, and they did a tremendous job at recreating the Myers house. The details, as you mentioned, in terms of the dead dog and the drain pipe or whatever it was that was. I forget what that thing is there, but it hits the window in the original film and scares Dr. Loomis and Brackett. That detail is hanging there. I mean, that's something that might. It wouldn't have surprised me if it was overlooked, but at the same time, I'm not surprised that they were able to nail it as well, because it is a detail that should be there. I thought everything looked tremendous. The way it was lit, the alleys, the alleyway that they were able to choose, because this was shot, I believe, in North Carolina, maybe South Carolina, North Carolina. I think the first one was South Carolina. This was North Carolina. They found a neighborhood with an alleyway that looks very much like the alleyways in Halloween 2 from 1981, even though that movie's no longer canon. Of course, it gives that small town sort of wartime home neighborhood kind of feel. And so that looked great. I thought Aaron Armstrong, who portrayed Michael Myers for the flashback, looked great. The way he was moving, I thought the mask looked great. I mean, everything about the flashback was really solid and really well done. So much so that a lot of Halloween fans have been saying, it's too bad we couldn't have watched a whole movie in this time period. That would have upped the budget to do a period piece. It's one thing to do, 10 minutes. It's another thing to do 90 minutes. And of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that would have been the right thing to do, because it worked, and it worked really well because it was quick. You know, you were in and out. The longer you stay in that world, the more chances you have to mess it up. But I thought the flashback was great. You know, because I was somebody that said when they announced that they were going to do a flashback, I was skeptical, and the reason why I was skeptical is because in either a very early draft, and this is true because this was covered by Bloody Disgusting, and I know that Christopher Nelson, who's the special effects makeup artist on the film, during a podcast that he does with Sean Clark, The Thing with Two Heads, somebody had asked him about this, and he said there was no truth to it. But I don't know, but this came from Bloody Disgusting, and it came from an interview with John Carpenter. So I don't know, maybe Chris is unaware of it. I mean, just because you work on a movie doesn't mean you know everything that happens behind the scenes, right? So, but that being said, it is a very early draft of the original film, 2018 I'm talking about. They were going to redo the ending of the original movie. Something to the effect, I don't know if it was just an idea or if it was actually a very early draft, but nonetheless it existed, where they were going to have Michael kill Dr. Loomis, and Laurie's the one that shoots him out the window. Now, that never made it to, obviously, a later draft. It never made it there. But that's why at the end of 18, when you look at Laurie's bedroom, the layout of the bedroom is very much like the layout of the Doyle house bedroom at the end of the first movie, where the balcony is, where the closet is, where the bed is. That was a set that they had built because they were going to reshoot the ending of the original film. So I was very skeptical that they were going to play in this world, because I thought, Jesus, you could really fuck this up. You know, I'm like, what are you going to do here, right? I was very pleased with how they handled it, especially that they were extending and creating a story to a character that is new. You know, how are you going to mess this? You know, are you going to mess it up? Are you not going to mess it up? I thought it was handled with class, and it looked really, really good. And I love that they ended on the shot of them, probably was a drone. Or actually, no, it was in a studio, so it might have been on a jib, on a crane maybe. But they ended with Michael on the front lawn with the cops there pulling backwards like they did at the end of 1963 when he was a clown in the clown costume. So I thought that was a nice touch. Anyway, I know I'm talking a lot, but hey, that's how I felt about it. I thought it was really, really well done. Again, that first 10 to 15 minutes, solid.
Okay. Well, so this kind of leads me to one of the other bigger issues I had with the film in general. I agree that on a technical level, the flashbacks were phenomenal. I thought they really did nail, like, for a second I actually was kind of going to text Sharon and be like, do they have old footage from Carpenter that they were able to get a hold of? Like, it looked great. And overall, I would say I was a huge fan of, like, the lighting and cinematography in general throughout the whole movie. That being said, and again, this leads to something we'll get to later, but I'm like thinking to myself, how necessary, though, is it to build in all these extra characters? And yes, we're talking about the kids that were there in the original film. And again, we'll get to it, but like, newcomers to the franchise don't have the relationship with any of these people in the flashback or even later. And those of us who are familiar, it's been how many years since we've seen them? So I didn't have a connection to that. Like, I thought it was technically well done, but I was kind of going, well, this looks really great, but why are we talking about them? And where's Laurie and what happened? Like, you know, like Sharon said, I wanted to go back to the house on fire and be like, where's Michael? I'll get into that more later, but but on a technical level, I thought it looked stunning. I thought it looked really great. It looked right out of the original.
But you have to understand too, this is the bridge between the first and the last part of this movie. So you can't, like, shoot your load like, you know, in the second film. Like, you can't, I think you need to take your time with Laurie's character. That's why that didn't really bother me. And also, if Donald Pleasance was still alive, he would have been in this, and they probably would not have written the character of Hawkins. And
I don't know if he would have been in it, because Donald Pleasance, you know, you have to remember that the actor himself was 60 in 1978.
Yeah.
So you fast forward 40 years, he's 100. So he probably would not have been in it.
Yeah, but, well, okay. That's a good point. But if he was young enough to be in it, you know, if there was a way to make his character, which, I mean, he actually was in it, which is my favorite part of the flashback.
That wasn't him. That was a dude.
I know.
Yeah.
It was so, you know, they
Tom
bring back
Jones Jr.
Yeah, Tom Jones Jr., but also the voice was done by Colin Mahan. So it was one actor playing the role and then another actor doing the voice, which they could have totally been cheap and just done like CGI or something. Like, I think I really appreciate the extra effort that they put into it by actually, and I thought it was CGI. I was like, how did they do this?
I did too.
I also thought, is this old footage
Yeah,
from
same.
Carpenter? And they just redid the audio. I'm like, how was this done? I was so shocked when I found out it was a lookalike. I thought that was amazing, but that, you know, he's a fan favorite from the original. So I think it was great for them to include that, and make him part of the film. But you know, because so many of the characters are old or dead or whatever, I think you had to bring some new life into it, which, you know, they're probably going to do, you know, they're definitely going to do with Scream. I mean, you're going to have all these new characters who are not going to be related to the original, you know, Sydney and Gail and everything. So to me, that didn't really bother me because I kind of expect it when you are going to remake. Well, it's not technically a remake, but when you're going to
reboot essentially,
or make a third iteration of this franchise now.
And I see your point, but Laurie got completely sidelined, which we'll talk about more, I think. And I would have been happier if they would have spent more of the time on Laurie and developing her character and other parts of the story, which we'll get to.
Which I think is going to be in Halloween Ends. I mean, I don't know. Once again,
but
nobody's been called a bitch yet, though. This is good.
Yeah,
good. This is good.
Yet, that's the keyword. All right. Any final thoughts on the flashback scene before we move on to the bar scene?
No. I thought it was very well done. So I think I've said all I had to say.
All right. So next we have the bar scene where we're introduced to Tommy Doyle, now played by Anthony Michael Hall. We have Lindsay Wallace, played by Kyle Richards, who is the original actress who plays Lindsay in the 78 film. We have Lonnie, played by Mike Flanagan favorite, Robert Longstreet.
And I'll be honest, I didn't even remember that character. I know they said he was mentioned in the original Halloween, but I didn't remember him at all.
He's the boy that picks on Tommy Wallace in the original. It's a very
Tommy
small.
Doyle.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. What did I say?
Wallace.
Did I say Tommy Wallace? Yep.
Yeah.
I still
Tommy
knew what you meant anyway.
And Mindy, that's your fault for not watching the original before you saw it again. Mm-hmm. You got to refresh yourself, man.
I did double feature 2018 and then Halloween Kills, actually. That's how I watched it. And let me tell you, that was an intense evening.
I bet.
And then we also have Nurse Marion, played by Nancy Stevens, who I wasn't aware she was alive, but that I thought was a great surprise for fans. And then Tommy gives his speech to the crowd at the bar. So thoughts on the way the film reintroduced us to these characters from the original, and also any thoughts on Tommy's speech? Dave?
Well, here's where the slide starts. So,
okay.
You know, thinking about it from a writing perspective, and, you know, it is always fun to reintroduce characters that we fell in love with, that we know, that we have some sort of emotional attachment to. And there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself. If actors are still alive and you find reasons to capitalize on bringing them back, I mean, you know, that might be fun, right? And if they're willing to do it, that might be fun. I remember when I met Charles Cyphers at the 40th anniversary Halloween convention in Pasadena in 2018. I think I had asked him something about acting or whatever. He's like, no, I'm not acting anymore. Well, all of a sudden he winds up in Halloween Kills, right? You know, money. No, but I mean, you know, it's always, you never know, but it's always fun, right? And I get that. The problem is that when you have a bunch of legacy characters and you have an ensemble, you run the risk of, you know, sort of shortchanging the point of them being there and having them things for them to do. It's nice to see them. That's cool because that gets the feels. That's the nostalgia feel. That's great. But that's for the hardcore fan, right? The casual movie fan or even the casual horror fan doesn't even know who the fuck these people are and doesn't even care about them, right? Like a perfect example is the shot of Brackett in the hospital. Well, we know as soon as we see him, oh, that's Charles Cyphers, that's Brackett. The camera then tilts down to show the name tag Brackett. Well, who exactly is that for? Because we as Halloween fans already know who he is, and if you don't know who he is, you're not going to know who Brackett is anyway. So it almost feels kind of like, I mean, I get why they did that, but that's how I think about it. So, but going back to the bar scene, I have trouble believing that these characters would be spending every Halloween together, getting together every Halloween and quote unquote celebrating, I guess. When I look at Nurse Marion, and part of the problem here, I know I'm kind of going all over the place, but part of the problem,
I'm agreeing with everything.
Part of the problem, I think, I understand why they got rid of Halloween 2 from 1981. I understand why. And I think I might have done the same thing. Because they wanted to get rid of the brother-sister arc, which was introduced in that film. I get that. They wanted to, and then of course, how do you explain, I mean, he's on fire. He's a raging inferno at the end. He had his eyes shot out. How do you, when you want to go back to the roots and create something a little more grounded, how do you explain that, right? How do you explain him still being there? I totally understand. It probably was the best thing to do. However, when you are creating a story now, the deeper we go into these films about the legacy and the trauma and the this and the footprint and how he's affected everybody in the town and everything, it's hard for me. And again, I've said on my own channel, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist. Who the hell am I to question anybody's personal PTSD? But as a viewer, it becomes harder the deeper we go into the effect that he's had on the town when it's only the first movie that existed. And, you had three people that were, and I'm not saying that that's not, something to sneeze at. I just mean that, he's been locked up for 40 years. I just feel that the way this town is and the way certain people are acting, I'm just not believing that these effects would continue to. I would, though, if Halloween 2 was canon. And I certainly would buy that the hospital would be going crazy because Halloween 2, there was a massacre at the hospital. So it would make sense to me that nurses and doctors and security guards were throwing caution to the wind, freaking out and running, and part of the mob because it's Haddonfield Memorial Hospital. I get it then. But that doesn't exist. That never happened. So, when I look at the characters at the bar and I look at the bar scene, it's nostalgic to see them. I appreciate seeing them. Tommy's speech confused me a little bit too because I was he gets up there and it's a great speech actually in terms of the how it was written. But I was confused because on my own channel I was saying, I thought that maybe they hadn't seen each other in a long time. And I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. I totally missed that the bartender said that they know the crazy lady down the street and they come together every year. Maybe it was because of his accent. I'm not sure. I missed that on the first two watches. And because when Tommy bursts into the hospital room to see Laurie, it felt so underwhelming. I mean, this is Tommy Doyle. This is Laurie Strode. This is kind of like, I wanted that Han Solo, Princess Leia reunion in The Force Awakens, right? I don't care what you think of the movie, but just that moment is like, there's nuance there. There's breathing room there. We sit with that, right? And with this, it just felt so kind of like, and I'm like, did they? And then everybody's like, well, they know each other. And I'm like, they do? And then I put my finger onto why I was confused. Tommy says at the very end of his speech, he holds up his glass and he says, to Laurie, wherever you are. Now, it makes sense from a writing perspective to cut from that to her in the back of the truck, which is what they do. That's quote unquote where she is. I get that it, cinematically it works, but wherever you are sort of speaks to me like they haven't talked in a long time. They don't know where she is. They have no idea. And so there was a lot of confusion there for me in the bar in terms of that. But the characters themselves, it's fun to see them, even though some of them are played by different actors. But I just felt these legacy characters by and large were underutilized, served no purpose other than to say, hey, remember me? Remember me? Remember me? And I would have much preferred maybe just, I don't even know why we needed Marion there. Probably because Nancy Stevens is still alive. I don't understand why we needed Charles Cyphers there. He was, and I say this with all due respect, I'm talking about the character now. He was useless, absolutely useless. There wasn't even a scene between him and Laurie at all. Probably because he's still alive. Well, we better, he's so really old. We got to get him in there. I would have much preferred if they had whittled it down to just Tommy, Lindsay, and Laurie.
Yep.
And then you could have focused more on character development.
Yeah, because I agree completely because that was where I started to lose. I started picking up my phone and caught myself doing rando email checks. And I went, wait, I'm watching a movie because while I do think that the idea of the town grieving and Tommy's speech, and it's an interesting idea. This movie has a lot of interesting ideas, but they're kind of just thrown out there and nothing comes of them. And it just feels wasteful. And I agree. I was actually getting more and more angry because I was like, okay, so now there's more people that we sort of knew 40 years ago, but okay, cool, they're still alive. But yeah, a newcomer wouldn't know who they are. And oh, wait, never mind, we're off to another kill anyway, so it doesn't matter. So yeah, there was just no weight or reason for it, especially when I think we had bigger fish to deal with. And this was billed as like the triumphant return of Laurie Strode, like when they first announced these movies, which also bothered me because like we're spending all this time on all this other auxiliary stuff.
I do think you have to look at all three as one big movie.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Ends is jumping 4 years into the future. It's actually going to take place present day 2022. Halloween Ends will. But Spencer is right. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to judge it on its own merits because that's how they're releasing it. They're releasing it in individual installments. But you also have to keep in the back of your mind, which is totally true, that the story's not finished yet. So when the trilogy is complete, you can have a bit of a different perspective. But having said that, I agree. I liked seeing them. My heart, my Halloween nostalgia goes, oh, there's Nancy Stevens. But I mean, I don't see the point for her character. She came back I'm not a big fan of Halloween H2O, but she was in that movie. We often forget she was at the very beginning of that film. She was killed. She had more character development in that movie than she did in this film. I don't see the point. I think the film would have been better if they had just focused on Lindsay and Tommy and allowed that relationship, to cut back to them. Maybe in the bar, it's just the two of them. Maybe they're married. Maybe they're not married. Might be a little bit of a cliche, but maybe they know each other. Maybe they're both divorced or something, or one is and one is, whatever. And they're still there. And it's just the two of them at the bar. Or it's him, her, and Lonnie. To bring Marion in there seemed a little I don't believe that she yes, she was attacked at the beginning of the first movie, but I just have trouble believing what they were selling.
I was confused at how she met up with Tommy and Lindsay and Lonnie. Like where did they connect? Like what part of their lives were they introduced to each other? But also then like the fangirl in me was like, oh, she's, from the original.
It's great to see her.
And I think, honestly, the reason they brought her in, besides she's still alive, is also they wanted to recreate the iconic car scene from the original, which we will get to. Of course.
And she's a sweetheart. Like I met her at I think she was at one of the conventions I was at. She's a sweetheart. She's absolutely amazing. But it's just, you're bringing them back, but you're not giving them much to do other than to just kind of be there. And then you're sacrificing... because think about all the development they could have, all the time that was spent on, trying to get them all in there. If you'd whittled it down to just a couple of characters, you could have spent more time with them and developed it a bit more.
100%.
Nancy Stevens was just she just was there, as Sharon said. She was there to just recreate the window scene. And,
And I will say, actually, to Spencer, to your point as well, I do realize the story's not finished. But having watched both films back to back, 2018 and then Kills, the difference between the two of them and the inconsistencies between the two of them were glaring.
Yeah. There's definitely a difference. I do appreciate the change in aesthetic tone in terms of the way it looks, the way they lit certain things. I do like the more cool aesthetic. I appreciate that very much. I like that part about kills. Of course, the kills and Michael, I'm sure we'll get to. But yeah, the bar scene's cool. I mean, it's there's nothing wrong with the scene in and of itself or the performances in it, but to see them all sitting there, Marion's the one that kind of stands out. You're like, really? Marion's like old enough to be their mom.
Grandmother?
No, because she was probably in her 40s and 78, right?
Maybe a
or
cool
late
aunt.
30s.
A cool aunt.
Yeah, she's certainly old enough to be their parents for sure.
They met up on a Facebook group for Mike Myers victims.
Oh yeah, there you go. The Haddonfield
That's what it is.
Facebook group.
The Haddonfield Facebook group, maybe. Yeah.
All right, so let's move on. Dave, you mentioned briefly they do the cutaway of Lori in the truck with Karen and Allison.
Yeah.
They're speeding away from the fire. Meanwhile, we see fire trucks going the other way towards the fire with Lori yelling, "Let him burn! Let him burn!
Let it burn."
Let it burn. Oh, yes.
Let it burn, yeah.
Thank you for correcting me. Let it burn. And then we see Michael Myers emerge from the house. Almost, this is what I thought. He's like a phoenix being resurrected from the fire because he is bigger, badder, faster, meaner than we have ever seen him in any of the other previous versions, including, I would say, the Rob Zombie versions.
Yeah, I was going to ask you guys which sequel it is that Mike Myers becomes a Marvel supervillain.
This one. This one.
This one, that's right.
And he takes out, I think, 11 firemen by himself.
Oh, yeah.
Within mere seconds. Thoughts on this scene, Dave?
Well, I mean, from a technical standpoint, it was beautifully shot. And it made me smile. It made me laugh. I don't mean laugh in a, this is crap. It just made me laugh because it's so epic. It's so over the top, but in that kind of good way that you expect when you walk into a movie like this. When he comes out of the firefighters are just minding their own business, getting their things ready. And then they look over and they see this guy coming out of the, it's like, well, who's that? It's like, uh-oh, here we go. And no matter how, I sort of, it's like watching WWE wrestling, or old clips, not now. I mean, I'm 42, so it's not like I'm watching it now. But when I watch old clips of like back in the day, back in the 80s or the 90s even, it still makes you smile when you see Goldberg come down the thing like way back in the day, or The Rock way back in the day come down the ramp and the crowd's going wild. So I kind of that's kind of how I felt when I saw him come out. It's still Michael Myers. Even though it's the sensationalism, everything, of everything that's going on around him, it still was epically shot. It certainly was epic. It absolutely looked cool. And he threw down with those firefighters and took them all out. And, I mean, if I was hired to write and direct the movie, no, I probably, if I was able to get away with it, they may be like, well, you're going to turn into this, or, you're not going to do it. It's not a direction I would have gone. I mean, I wouldn't have made a movie that was so sort of, graphic. But I'm going in seeing a movie called Halloween Kills. So, I knew that going in, and it was I had fun with it. I didn't have any issues in terms of anything other than, yes, is it against everything we know about him? Sure, absolutely, right? It's moving away from that Hitchcockian sort of theater of the mind completely, even away from the tone of the 18 film. And I think that's where sort of there's inconsistencies here. Like the 18 film was very much, not exactly, but more in line with that theater of the mind. Again, not exactly, but more in line with that. And then Kills is a complete 180 in tone. So, it's a different way of doing things, but I didn't hate it. I mean, I enjoyed watching, again, from that purely that ride perspective.
Yeah.
Just from a pure icing, no cake, but a lot of icing. It was great.
And just to comment on the writing, like they actually addressed his superhero-ness, but it again was like a throwaway. There was a moment towards the end of the movie where Laurie actually says something to the effect of, the more he kills, the more powerful
the more he
becomes.
Kills, the more he transcends. Yeah.
But like it was, again, she said it. Now Mike Myers is killing another person. Like
right.
No time to linger on it or even catch that line. So
Yeah. The only way I can explain it is really Phoenix resurrecting from the fire is like, here's a brand new Michael Myers, folks. We have not seen this before because in the original movie, there's no blood. There is no gore in the 78 Halloween. It is,
Correct.
It's theater of the mind, as you said. So, a little bit more violence, gore in 2018. This one just took it way over the top, which I don't mind. I find that to be fun. But yeah, it doesn't fit the MO of Michael Myers
the
at all.
sadism, especially.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay.
in just a
It
second.
doesn't, but at the same time, it's 2021, and studios have to, these movies are not made for. I say this. I hope your audience takes this with a grain of salt, right? I don't mean it like completely, but generally speaking, these kinds of movies are not made for us because we're not the people that, the hardcore fans. We're going to be there on day one on the announcement of a movie going into development. You know what I mean? They don't even the reason why trailers show so much is because they're competing with streaming and they need to get people into the seats and all this kind of stuff. And the reason why it's more violent, it's trying to appeal to a general movie going audience in 2021. And I understand that, I get it. So I was prepared for that. But yes, it is a complete 180 from what we know. If you really want to get down to it, any single movie that is ever created after 1978 defeats the whole purpose of Halloween 1978, even Halloween 2 from 1981, which is still my favorite sequel. The whole point of the original film was to be a one-off. That was it. It was, he was gone at the end of the movie, not to set up a sequel. He was gone at the end of the movie to drive the message home that you can't kill the boogeyman. It's like as I've said many times, it's a 90-minute like Twilight Zone episode, and that's it. It was the boogeyman. As a matter of fact, it was. And that's the end of the movie. She has her arc, right? At the beginning of the movie, she doesn't believe in it. Laurie, what's the boogeyman? Tell me there's no such thing. She doesn't buy into it. She doesn't believe it. And then by the end of the movie, when she goes, it was the boogeyman. That's basically her saying, holy fuck, Tommy was right. And Dr. Loomis says, as a matter of fact, it was.
Yeah.
And that's it. And and Carpenter was, when it became the highest grossing independent horror movie of all time, Carpenter was asked to come back and direct a sequel. And he's like, why would I do that? I just be making the movie's done. It's not supposed to, it was just this little thing we did. It was not his, but and here we are, right? So, no matter what you do, even if you try to follow the rules of the original mythology, which is he is a man, he's not a complete supernatural force, he's a man with supernatural elements. There's something weird there, not sure. The more sequels you make, inevitably you're going to run into, we gotta kind of just, and that's what they're doing now. And, I don't know. He looked pretty supernatural at the end of Kills to me.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
I'm sorry, Dave, what are they doing now? Can you
turn in the screws, they're going, yeah, well, maybe we'll just loosen this up a little bit. I know we said we wanted him to be a complete man, but now we realize we're making more sequels and we just can't do that. So we're going to open it up a little bit further and we'll see how much we can go. And that's what it is, right? And they see how much the audience will buy, and it's like, I thought you said he was a man. Well, he is a man. No, he's a man. He was, the shit kicked out of him. He was shot at point blank range in the chest and he just got back up. How can you say he's a man now?
Yeah.
I love that you're fanboying out on that, but I just really wanted to hear your voice do that little bit of it
And
again.
too bad our listeners couldn't see you doing the little movements that go along with that. You just scared Audrey that time. She just jumped off my lap.
Also, future episode idea, have Dave reenact all of the original Halloween, doing all the voices.
All the voices.
I could.
All the sound effects. All right. So let's move on to the first. The firefighters, I guess, were the first people that we see being killed.
Yeah.
But then once he, starts going out into the neighborhoods again, we see the couple who are killed by him. And then, every kill in this movie is just going to be brutal.
Yeah. It's my favorite kills in the movie.
The couple, I actually really enjoyed the scene. I liked the couple. I thought they were totally cute. I was like, this is gonna be Spencer and me in like 50 years, like drinking.
There's a big fella with a monster mask. Great.
Drinking cheap Beaujolais and eating cheese crackers, right?
Kind of sounded like he had like a Boston accent a bit too, I think, or something. Not too far from the car.
Yeah, that actor actually played the chief of the fire department in New York City on the show Rescue Me.
Oh, I
okay,
remember that
cool,
show.
Cool,
Yeah.
cool.
But the scene where he flips on the light in the bathroom and Michael Myers is standing there and just punches the light and it goes out again, that got me. I jumped. I mean, I knew he was in there. I knew something was going to happen, but the way they shot that, I just thought was perfect. It's not something I've seen before. I loved it.
It's cool, for sure.
Yeah, it was really cool.
I did not dig the sadism, but honestly,
you never do. You're such a buzzkill. Sorry.
But Sharon, to be fair, your Phoenix rising out of the flames analogy is kind of not changing my mind, but making me think about this a little bit differently, because that is an interesting point. This is a new Michael Myers. But one of my major issues overall with the movie, and extends to this scene, unfortunately, as well, is what is referred to as the idiot plot. So think like suspension of disbelief, but this is from an article from a writer named Ryan Talico, who writes for Roger Ebert's old website. Roger Ebert wrote the following about the first Halloween sequel back in 1981. The plot of Halloween 2 absolutely depends, of course, on our old friend, the idiot plot, which requires that everyone in the movie behave at all times like an idiot. And so basically, when a horror movie, let's face it, they all have idiot plots. But when they are working in the ways they're supposed to, you don't notice or you ignore the idiot plot. Right. For me, Halloween Kills didn't accomplish that. And so I was too hung up on that. Like the old lady had a knife when the husband went to check the door and then like dropped it immediately and was defenseless. And I'm like, you could have just stabbed him. Why did you drop the knife?
Really, was she going to just stab him? He put his fist through a wall and killed her husband. She wasn't going to do shit. I'm sorry, Mindy.
Hang on,
she
ladies.
knew
I'm
she
just going to
was
get some
dead.
popcorn, okay? I just want to listen to you guys go back and forth.
Gloves are coming off now.
Well, and this is also where I have that hard time with, like, these are movies that it's literally called Halloween Kills. What the fuck do you think is going to happen?
Yes.
Of course.
But I was expecting more substance, and I was
But it
disappointed.
should never be. See, here's one of the big things that I think, and you know, I've heard this argument before. Well, it's called Halloween Kills. What do you expect? It's a slasher movie. What do you expect? It's a this movie. It's supposed to be campy. You know, the dialogue is supposed to be like this. It's supposed to be like that. And you know, I do believe in. I think these people's hearts are in the right place, and I understand what they're saying. However, you know, I don't think that should be used as an excuse or a crutch, you know, because these critiques and criticisms, there's merit to it. When you create a movie like Halloween 18 and you take it as seriously as you do, you know, regardless of whether you call the next movie Halloween Kills or not, doesn't mean all of a sudden that the decisions and the motivations of the characters all of a sudden have to just fall away.
Thank
or
you.
the dialogue's got to be cheesy and campy or whatever. Like, what? Wait a minute. Like you set an expectation, so I expect that you carry that through. I believe you still could have created a movie called Halloween Kills, which at the end of the day is really only, as long as you deliver on the high body count, then you've honored the title of the movie. So now create a good story, you know, around it. I mean, you don't have to then fall back to mid 80s cheese, or you know, or something. I think these are excuses for, let's just say what it is, bad writing. I mean, I think it's just, I think the dialogue is anyways, we'll get to that. But to your point, I think there is a difference in tone. I think, I'll just say it now. I was going to wait till the very end to say it, but I'll say it now. I think Halloween 18 is a better movie. I think it's a better movie structurally. I think it's a better movie pacing. I think it's a better movie acting. Even though it didn't have the extremely important Halloween things in it that I wanted to see in order for me to rave about it, and that I think are just as important and arguably the most important character of a Halloween film, which is how Michael behaves and the visual aesthetic, the mood, the atmosphere, this kind of stuff. It's a better film. I think Kills is kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
I'll agree with that. Although I will say Kills is way more fun to watch. As you said earlier on your first watch.
Yeah, it was fun. I had more fun watching it, but that's largely because of the kills. Right?
Yeah.
But I don't think that should be, and I'm not saying you guys are saying that. I just mean like people out there I've heard, trying to defend it. Well, what do you expect? What do you mean, what do I expect? I expect 18. That's what I expect. I expect the maturity of Halloween 18. Just because it's called Halloween Kills doesn't negate the maturity of it.
Right.
I mean, you can still deliver on that aspect as long as you deliver on the kills.
And there were times where I thought maybe they were trying to kind of be meta about it, like, with the old school horror movie tropes and all that. But I agree with you, given what happens in 2018 and the seriousness of that movie and the way that movie was handled, like you have to kind of pick one or the other. You can't kind of try to be Scream and be, Mike Myers killing everybody. Like you kind of have to pick which direction you're going. And I just felt like they were kind of all over the place and didn't know what they were making a statement about, if they were making a statement at that.
Well, there definitely was a statement that was being made. We'll get to that when we talk about it.
There's a doozy of one, but
I have this. Yeah, I have a whole section
Sorry,
on
Sharon.
that.
All right,
that
anyway.
I'm assuming we're all talking about the same statement. We'll see when we get to that part.
Okay, all right.
We're all pretty smart. I think
we're talking about Karen's Christmas sweater, right?
Yes. No. All right, so let's go back to the bar where we get to know Marcus and Vanessa, the doctor and nurse. We get to know them a little bit more. I really liked their
Most
characters.
developed characters in the
too.
movie. No,
Yeah, so let's put a pin in that
like
for
them.
just a second. But then they played the news report at the bar. We now know 4 people are dead. Tommy starts organizing groups to hunt down the killer, which he suspects to be Michael Myers. And Vanessa and Marcus go to leave the bar right away. As soon as you see the fogged windows, you're like, I know where this is going.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you've seen
the original, I mean, yes. I mean, this movie was made by a fan of the original. And every fan of the original is probably going to go see this. So, but later we find out, it's not Michael Myers in the car. It's one of the other escapees from the bus wreck. And this is the start of the vigilante justice, and the uprising of the citizens of Haddonfield begins. So we'll get into where it goes, which is the mob scene at the hospital, in just a bit. But how did you feel about, did you find it to be believable that this vigilante justice, like where it began, not so much how it goes, but how it started? Dave, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think that, when she left the bar and she gets into her car and then she's like, oh my God, obviously we're thinking it's actually Michael Myers because they don't show what he looks like. They don't even show what he looks like when he takes off down the street in the car. So, I don't have any issues with that, with how it started. I'll just answer that. How it started, no, I had no issues with that.
Okay, Mindy.
I felt a little bit like Tommy went from 0 to rage freak out pretty quick. But to be fair,
it's understandable.
Like you said, he was putting 2 and 2 together and thinking, oh crap, this is very much like years ago. But it happened very quickly in the moment, and that felt weird to me. But I also don't necessarily see it as being unreasonable reaction-wise, if that makes any sense.
And also, he grabbed a baseball bat to defend himself. So obviously he didn't know the extent, I think, of Michael Myers' power in this film, because otherwise he would have grabbed something better than a baseball bat to defend himself. And he walks up there like by himself, like, I'll handle it. Like, and I was like, wow, okay. Like either he has no idea like who Michael Myers really is,
But
or
if they had more character development with him, you may have been able to buy it, right? It's because we don't know who he is. We don't know who Tommy Doyle is today. One of the things, and this is a very minor thing, it doesn't mean real. This is just... But if I was writing the script, instead of referring to himself as Tommy Doyle, I would have had him refer to himself as Tom Doyle. It shows a little bit of a maturity, right? And again, it's not a big deal. Your audience might be thinking, I don't get it. What's the big deal? When he's on the stage and he's talking about the events in the bar, he says something like, and I'm Tommy Doyle, and I'm whatever. It's not that people who are called Tommy, Billy, Davey, Timmy, whatever, when they're kids don't take that on later in life. Sometimes they do. But generally speaking, if you are called that, it's like an affectionate thing because you're little, it's cute. Oh, little Billy, little Timmy, little Tommy, whatever, right? Generally speaking, once hit a certain age, it's Tom, but not all the time. So that's why I said it's a bit of a nitpick, but there just was no character development with any of these characters. So for us as an audience, we're seeing him react in a way that is surprising to us, going from 0 to 106 seconds. Maybe he always goes from 0 to 106 seconds, but there's no evidence for it. So I don't know. I'm just like, wow, he's going really fast,
What's the deal with old Huckleberry? Is that something we should have known? Because they made a very specific point of showing that name on the baseball bat.
I don't know it. Dave, do you?
No, I think it was just, I'm not sure. I guess the bar owner's dad or something, or.
Okay. Did you have something to say, Spencer?
Dave, were you called Davey when you were a kid?
People did. I had a little thing. There was a little thing that I don't know if it was my mother or whatever. It was Davy in the Navy, Davy in the gravy. Little cute little thing.
In the gravy.
In the gravy. Yeah, I don't know who sang that to me, but not generally, right? But do adults also go by that? Tommy, Davy, Billy? Sure they do. Billy Joel. Now but that's his stage name. Whether his wife refers to him as that or his friends go, "Hey Billy, what's going on?" They probably call him Bill.
I think they call him Billy Joel.
Yeah. Hey, Billy Joel.
Well, but also to your point, though, I also am not a fan of the writing, Dave, but the whole Tommy name could have been a half-assed attempt at character development because maybe Tommy has been Tommy all this time because 100%. Of what happened.
Stunted growth because of trauma.
Right, and it's a regression thing, for sure.
Untreated PTSD.
Again, interesting idea, not enough development.
Right, and if they had done away with some of these legacy characters, we could have had more time with them.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe instead of, although I do like the, I forget their names in the movie, the black couple there at the bar.
Marcus and Vanessa.
Marcus and Vanessa, thank you. I actually adored them. I thought they were great.
Agreed.
But in a movie but even them in the big picture, they're not like well-developed characters. They're just in comparison to everybody else, they stand out because they're the most developed out of them all. But again, a way to restructure it might be like, maybe it's not them sitting there. Maybe it's Tommy and Lindsay that are sitting there and they're talking and there's a moment with them talking back and forth. We sit with them and we have some exposition and there's a little bit of backstory and, whatnot. Again, I'm not saying get rid of Marcus and Vanessa, but because maybe they come into the bar afterwards. Maybe they already know each other, and they sit down and they talk to them, or I don't know. I just think it was, not a lot of reasons for me to care. When Marion Chambers died, I could not have cared less.
Agreed.
And
we'll come to that very, very shortly. So correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, because you've seen 2018 more than I have. We finally come to the Myers house and are introduced to Big John and Little John. And they do not, because I rewatched 2018 after I watched Kills, and then I watched Kills again. They do not show the Myers house at all in 2018.
They don't.
They don't. Okay,
No.
So we're finally coming to the Myers house. We're introduced to Big John and Little John, who I also really liked. I could do an entire episode about the decor because I loved it.
Totally agree.
So much. They rehabbed the shit out of that place. So what are your thoughts on the decor? No.
I thought it was
love what they do with
splendid.
the
I
place.
thought it was beautiful. Yes.
right, good. We're all in agreement on that. So now let's move on to, these parties of people who are breaking up on the hunt for Michael Myers. We have Lindsay, Marion, Marcus, and Vanessa driving around, and they see the three little brats who stole the candy from John and John on the playground. And I'm sure you noticed that their masks are the Silver Shamrock masks from Halloween 3, the jack-o'-lantern skull and the witch. As soon as I saw Marion in the passenger seat, I said, oh no, they are going to recreate her scene from Halloween, the original Halloween. And sure enough, not only did they do that, but they also even had Michael Myers have the wrench strapped to his hand to break the glass, which was the same technique that they used in the 1978 film.
He had a wrench in his hand?
Yep. So if you watch the original 1978...
yes, that I know. But
Yes.
he had a wrench in Kills?
Yep. They said that they used the same technique, that they used the
Yeah.
wrench
So
to shatter the glass.
it was a hidden wrench.
It was
again,
in his palm, that when he put his
In
palm
78,
down.
yes.
Yeah.
In 78, and you can actually see it when you pause it. You can actually see it there. It's not, he's not supposed to have it. It was just a way for the stunt guy to break it.
Yeah.
But if you pause, you can see it. I didn't see a wrench in his hand in Kills, though.
I didn't see it, but according to the trivia, they used it.
Oh, okay. All right.
So
Okay.
I just thought that was kind of interesting. I love movie trivia like that.
I wonder where he got the wrench from then.
Yeah. I don't think he was. Yeah. Once again, not supposed to have it. Just
Okay. All right.
They decided to use it just to make it more authentic.
Maybe
or,
they said the same technique. Maybe they just meant the same way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe Spencer Petey is looking it up though, because it.
Breaking the window, like in the same manner, maybe.
Right,
Maybe not
right.
necessarily the same way, but
So the
same
quote from
thing.
the trivia from IMDb was they even used a wrench strapped to Michael Myers' hand to break the glass in Halloween Kills.
Well, it is IMDb, so you take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
But maybe they did. Maybe there's somewhere where that can be verified. I wouldn't use IMDb as the
Is the
the
official
gatekeeper.
trivia?
Yeah, no.
They're the new
I could
Yahoo.
go on there. I could go on there right now and write that Michael Myers in that scene was wearing polka dot underwear, and it would wind up on there.
That is also a fact. Did you know that? No.
I do actually.
For us, IMDb is like the Yahoo Answers for movie information. Like
It's pretty amusing sometimes.
Yeah.
So here's the first real scene that I hated in this film.
Okay.
Maybe you can explain this to me, Dave, how this worked. But Vanessa jumps out of the window. We know she has a gun. Where the fuck did she go? Because she did not help her husband or Marion after she jumps out of the car. The next time we see her, it's like at least a minute or two later. Everyone else except for Lindsay is already dead. And we see a shot of Vanessa walking. She's got to be like 20 feet away from the car, like walking towards the car, shooting Michael Myers. Like, what happened in between the time she jumped out of the car and was laying on the ground right next to the car?
Well, I think she had to go to the bathroom, so I think she had to go behind a tree and do a little tinkle and then come back.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I've talked about that on my channel as well. I said it's where does she go? I mean, it doesn't make sense that you would leave your husband there, to fend for himself, and you just kind of run away, because it's not like she's limping back and
Right.
she's bloodied and you're like, oh, maybe she was injured and she was lying there unconscious for a moment or something and then she came to. I mean, that would have been more appropriate, that maybe when she jumped out of the car, she fell and hit her head on the cement. And we see that. We see the gung, and she's like, oh, and then we realize as an audience, oh shit, she's unconscious. You know what I mean? And then Michael's attacking her husband, and then she comes to, and then she kind of gets up and starts to shoot. That seems more logical, but she just sort of ran off, leaving her husband there, and then comes back all of a sudden and starts shooting from like 20 feet away. She's a terrible shot.
Yeah.
And then Michael kicks the door and the gun's turned on herself and she shoots herself by accident. I think the whole scene is strange. Again, it's not, I mean, it's competently made, it's well shot and all that kind of stuff. But, in terms of character motivations, why is Michael leaping up onto the hood or onto the roof? I mean, it doesn't really make, like you can say, well, he did that in the original. Yeah, but he did that in the original. Like it was motivated. It felt like, I don't know. It just felt more motivated to do that, to catch them by surprise or whatever, it just feels a little strange it feels a little unnecessary, a little overkill, no pun intended, to do that. But of course, if he didn't do that, then how would you get that great shot of him smashing the side window? So yeah, the nurse, I don't know where she went. I think it is just, I have no explanation other than just an absence. Yeah, it's a flaw. I mean, it's a absence in character motivation.
I remember her saying that she had a gun and knew how to use it, but did she have it on her initially?
Yeah, she showed it in the car.
That's what I couldn't, even though I just watched this, I couldn't remember.
Well, she took it from her husband because her husband didn't know how to use it, and she took it from him and saying, well, I know how to use this. It actually wasn't her gun. I believe it was one of the guns they got in the back of the car or something. Or maybe it was her gun.
Because was it Lonnie's car? Because
I think that's right.
Have a bunch of guns in the car.
Something like that. And she took it all. I know how to use this or whatever. And it's cute. Like I really enjoyed their back and forth. But in terms of her taking off only to come back, 2 minutes later, I don't understand. What would be her motivation to do that? No,
I thought that was really poorly written. And that was the first part. I was like, this is really, really stupid. Plus, they kill two of the main, there's not a ton of people of color in this film,
right? But
they kill, the two black characters right away that could have played a much bigger part in the film. So that pissed me off.
Right. And I will add to this, not just because they're black, but because they were more interesting than our legacy characters. Mm-hmm. And that's almost an even, on top of course, having diversity, which of course is always important, but they were more interesting, so I cared more about them than I did Marion, or anything like that. So yeah, to your point, Sharon, I mean, that it's too bad they didn't last a little bit longer. I mean, certainly, okay, kill them. I get it. But maybe a bit longer would have been nice. I think, again, if the nurse didn't fall out of the car and hit her head, maybe she falls out of the car, she gets up and she runs screaming, help, help, help. She's just running, whatever. She's just out there, or maybe she tries to wave down a car, and the car's like, fuck this, and takes off or something, something that gives the audience perspective of where she currently is when shit's going down in the car. Because right now it just looks like she went off. Sorry?
I think we should make a short film of where did she go for those 5
where
minutes?
did she go? That's right. And it's this whole idea where she goes around the corner, she's sitting there, she's eating,
I would say that maybe she ran off to get a good shot so that she could get Michael Myers.
No, that makes no sense.
I was going to say that we see that she's not a good shot, so that clearly does not hold water.
You need close range shoot. No, that makes no sense. And if someone's attacking your husband and a stranger, you're not gonna. That was, I think, one of the worst scenes in the film. All right. We got to talk about this.
Let's get into it.
I don't know if you are going to say this, but I do want to say this. The scene that follows immediately after that with Lindsay, I think Lindsay was my favorite of the legacy characters because,
Agreed.
And again, this is relative because it's not like she had a lot to do. She didn't. But she had the most to do, which isn't saying much, out of all of the legacy characters. She had a confrontation with Michael at the SUV. Then she runs off into the forest area there. Michael follows her. There's actually, it's probably the most suspenseful moment of the film.
Yeah.
There's some nice suspense there, not really thick or anything, but there's some nice moments there. And she's hiding kind of in the tree, not in the tree, but at the bottom of the base of the tree. And you see Michael, and he's looking around and the moonlight's coming down and everything. And she's sitting there there was some genuine suspense there with this OG original legacy character. And that was fun to watch. I wish it could have lasted longer. It needed more of that.
The cat and mouse between her.
Yes, or cat and mouse between anybody in the film. Yeah. But with her, especially because of what she means to the to fans and to the mythology. I mean, this is the same girl that was there that night. And,
and that's the last.
You got to capitalize on that.
That's the last that they showed her in the film. Then, right? I don't remember her making an appearance at the end.
She was brought into the hospital.
Yeah.
And she was plopped in a wheelchair and then taken off somewhere, and that's the last we see of her. She didn't even have a moment with Laurie either. But I hear she's supposed to be coming back for Ends, so I think she'll have a moment there.
Well, I did read a quick interview with the actress whose name I don't...
Kyle Richards.
Thank you. And it was just funny, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, but she was like, I just couldn't believe I got to live.
Right. It's true.
All right, so you bring up the hospital. It's a great segue because we're going to talk about the hospital mob scene. It's getting bigger and bigger and becomes completely out of control. You have, some conversations with Lori, Karen, Allison. You have some conversations between Lori and Hawkins, which it sounded earlier like you had a lot to say about that, Dave. So I'll let you talk about that. And everyone thinks Michael Myers is on his way to the hospital. And like you can understand that the town's in a total panic. They want to, stop this person has a legacy of killing the townspeople.
Well, right, it's one night, right?
But it's a legacy of that night. He killed a bunch of people in the town. Their families are still alive. You see Brackett is still there. Like, his daughter was killed that night. Like, and as Tommy says in the bar, some of you may never have heard this story because obviously you're going to have like newer people, younger generations who haven't heard it. But I believe like if the town you're growing up in,
sorry, I'm sorry.
So I was going to say, like, if something like that happened, it's going to be kind of a legacy, there's going to be tales told.
And he killed his sister when he was a kid as well.
No, he didn't.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Right.
So that just makes it even more like impactful.
I honestly chalked that whole situation up to the idiot plot thing because I was like, I find it totally unbelievable that everybody would be focusing on one location.
Yes.
In mass hysteria.
Yes. I find that a little hard to believe. I can see how people would get worked up. I don't see how they would get that worked up and that's end up
to
there.
your point. Yeah, no, it's a great point, Sharon, because nobody, certainly not me, is suggesting that there would be no history of this character, this 6-year-old boy who murdered his sister in 1963, and then he broke out in 1978, and he murdered a couple more people, and then he was put away, and certainly that would be that would be something that would be there, but it would be more, I think, after 40 years being locked up for 40 years. That's 40 Halloweens. That's that's a generation or two there. I think. It's very real for certain people, and that's fair. But I think how easily Tommy was able to rally the troops just didn't quite fit. It was like, unless, like I said, if Halloween 2 was canon and you are rallying the troops in Haddonfield Memorial Hospital, where he murdered 15 people and chased Laurie Strode down the hallway and killed some doctors and nurses and security guards and all that kind of stuff, then it would make sense. Maybe even one of the doctors that's working there now is one of the sons of the nurse that was killed, or one of the, who knows, right? It makes more sense than why I just had trouble believing that you would be able to rally the troops that easily over something that is more localized in terms of certain people, and the way that doctors and nurses and security guards threw caution to the wind were yelling and screaming and running through their own hospital, knocking over patients in the hallways and stairwells. I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, this just seems absolutely bonkers. I don't believe that it would be to that degree. And this is sort of the problem that I find that David Gordon Green's Halloween trilogy is moving towards, is that, and I think, and I say this with all due respect, not to you guys, I mean to Jamie Lee Curtis. I say this with all due respect, and it's purely speculation on my part. It is purely speculation on my part. I want to get that out there now.
Okay.
But I believe there's enough circumstantial evidence, at the very least, that it's possible. I believe that Jamie Lee Curtis, this is my opinion only, but I've talked about this on my channel. I believe that Jamie Lee Curtis, because she's a social activist, we know that if you follow her on Instagram, Twitter, wherever, she's very opinionated, very vocal about shit going on in the world and, and all that kind of stuff, and all the power to her. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. All the power to her. She should have the right to do that. I cannot help that feel that in order for her to come back on board with this new trilogy, that her finding, I guess I'm having trouble believing, again, purely speculation. I'm having trouble believing and buying into that from the very beginning, this was a story that David Gordon Green and Danny McBride were trying to write.
I agree.
The depth of this whole thing. Now, Jamie Lee Curtis is also an executive producer. And I have a feeling, I'm not saying that it wasn't there, horror films for generations, for decades have not everyone, but there's been a lot of horror movies that deal with social commentary. But usually it's subtext, it's not overt, it doesn't take over necessarily, unless that is the point, like a movie like Get Out or Us, right? But generally in the slasher genre, it's subtext, it's there, it's not kind of in your face, or they do it more in a nice subliminal kind of way. I cannot help but feel that Jamie Lee Curtis, when she read the script to Halloween 18, because when you watch her in interviews at press junkets and all this kind of stuff after the fact, it's always about trauma. 3 generations of women, this. And there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself. But because she's so passionate about it, I can't help but feel that, was that the story that McBride and Green were writing? Or is this her way of saying, hey, listen, you see this little thing here that you have in the script? Can we really make this bigger and really, because she's played Laurie Strode how many fucking times? She needed something different to glom onto, to grasp, to justify her coming back and playing this character again. And she needed passion. What is my motivation? What do I need so I can be inspired to come to the set and, hey, you know what? This is what this movie's about. Sure, it's Michael Myers, but let's make it about these 3 women and the generational trauma and how it's affected the town, and about, how she's rising up against her oppressor, and it's the oppressed and the oppressor and this and this and this, very hot and current right now and all this kind of stuff. I can't help but feel that they were like, hey, if that's what it's going to take to get you on board, let's do it, Jamie. And again, speculation, but I think it's because a lot of that narrative is not subtext in these films. Especially in Kills now, it's becoming quite overt. And I think it's sort of starting to kind of dilute, and because you got to spend so much time on it. When it's subtext, you can weave it into the subliminal messaging within your current narrative. I hit my head on my mic there. In your current narrative, when it's overt, when it's part of the sort of like in your face, you got to spend more time with it, because you have to, you got to really build sort of scenes around it now. And that's kind of how I feel about it. And I think it's that hospital scene is with the other mental patient and whatnot is we're running into that. I can talk about that in a second, but I know my time's up.
So I think that was the subtext of the original, was like the 3 generations of trauma these women coming together.
That's right.
But on this one, what I took away from it, because this is set up from the very first flashback, Jim Cummings' character talks about when he was a little boy and he went to go play with Michael Myers. Michael Myers would be staring out the window. And what was he thinking? And, overlooking Haddonfield and just, whatever was going through his mind. But then you have the establishing shot of the muddy footprints when Jim Cummings, after he tells that story, he goes into the room and they're right by the window. That's when, Michael Myers comes out. Then at the hospital during the mob scene, I believe this was after they end up forcing that poor man to jump off the building. She sees her reflection in the mirror. I forgot exactly what the dialogue was, but basically, to me, the underlying message of this whole film was it's holding up a mirror to society, basically saying that everyone has the potential to become what they hate. Everyone has the potential to become a monster, or who is the real monster? Is it Michael Myers? Is it the citizens of Haddonfield? Like, are we all monsters? Like, I think that was the underlying message in this
100%.
one.
100%. No, you're bang on. That's exactly what it was. And the mob through the hospital with the mental patient and all that is all about, misinformation, and because he's not really Michael Myers, and how do we not know it's Michael Myers, and how people can behave when they are fed misinformation and they rise up and they're going after somebody and they essentially kill somebody who's innocent. It's all there. It's not in the message in and of itself. It's in the execution. And I think that, there was this, I don't believe that people would mistaken this Danny DeVito as Michael Myers. I don't believe that would be the case. And I know that the actor actually who played him has actually since passed in real life.
Yeah,
he died,
I heard that.
a few months ago. So again, I'm not talking about this from a personal perspective. We're talking about the characters and the writing.
Oh, for sure.
And I don't believe it. I think I think there are other ways. It's not really. The message you're talking about, Sharon, is bang on, and I think that's an important one. But the overselling of it all, it just didn't feel earned. It felt like we have a message to get out, so we need to make sure we get this message out. But the performances and the dialogue, it was very theatrical, very stage, and some of the directions they were going, and it was like in the middle, the whole hospital part in the middle was just like, well, we got to make sure we get this message out. And it's like, it's not that the message comes out, it's how you do it. And you got to be very careful with that, because if you take up too much screen time, delivering a message, because it's not really subtext anymore. I mean, they're starting to kind of bring it to from your subconscious to your conscious mind, and really sort of tell you, hey, this is what it's about, which is fine. But I don't know if these Halloween films are the right avenue for it, at least so overt.
Yeah. And I actually, Dave, that's a really interesting theory about Jamie Lee Curtis and like her activism stance. I hadn't even thought about that. But having said that, I would actually argue that specifically in Kills, the filmmakers failed in terms of, showing, these three generations of women that have been affected and how it empowers them or doesn't empower them. I think that they failed in a realistic way displaying, and again, like you said, I can't speak for what trauma does to other people, but I think that they kind of failed at what they said they were trying to do.
Right.
And Jamie Lee or not, like, that was just really disappointing to me, because they could do better.
Yeah, and I think the first film does a terrific job of that. I think it's more subtext. You get it, and because they're showing and not telling.
Yes.
And you can see it. You can see when she comes into the restaurant and she breaks down, and you can see how she speaks to her daughter, and you can see when her daughter sort of, says gotcha, and she comes out of it or whatever. I mean, despite whether it was good or bad or whatever, you can certainly see what they were going for. But I do think that, the first film was about this. Now the second film was about this. Now the third film, what I hear, I mean, it's pretty common knowledge now that Halloween Ends was supposed to originally going to take place on the same night. It was going to be 3 movies that all take place the same night. Well, the pandemic kind of changed that, and now they had more time to think about it. And because of the whole everything going on, and Trump and all this kind of stuff, I don't want to say that. I don't know if that's going to get you demonetized, but anyway,
you can't say the T word on our show.
Okay, the whole
No, I get it.
yes, I'm talking about this guy, that guy right there. Sharon and Mindy are the best. I'm telling you, they're great.
Okay, you're scaring me. Stop
great.
Yeah, that's a too good of an impression.
All right, you suck, Melania. But all the stuff that goes on, right? All the stuff that's been going on in the world over the last couple of years. It is my understanding that now they've changed it, and it has. It's now jumping 4 years into the future. David Gordon Green has even said that the post-pandemic world and all that kind of stuff is going to play a role in Halloween Ends. And so that tells me, well, that and I'm not saying that the movie's not going to be good. I'm not saying it's not going to be tremendous. We could watch Halloween Ends and go, holy fuck, that was amazing, right? And we're always crossing our fingers that that's the case. And it's not that you can't adapt. I don't want people to get the wrong impression, but this does tell you that they had something and now they've changed it. And maybe they've changed it for the better, but it does tell me that they now want to, they are in fact capitalizing on these current political things that are going on. So it kind of makes, I'm just like, write a good story. What was the first script you wrote? Because maybe it's better. And maybe that's what you should go with.
Well, I heard Halloween Ends is all about climate change, and it takes place on Mars.
I think that is the case, actually.
Just kidding.
And the face of Mars is actually, the face on Mars is Michael Myers.
Oh, brilliant.
So just really quickly back to the mob scene.
Yes,
What I thought was going to happen and I think would have been much better than what actually happened. I wasn't into the huge mob scene. Like seeing doctors and nurses in full on killing mode was like, what the fuck?
Well, yeah,
but
'cause it's
I
not earned.
loved how Karen, her character, tried to help the guy and locked him in between, you know, those two doors. And there is a moment where you see Tommy Doyle. He's looking, you know, at the guy, and he kind of has like a little glimpse of like, oh. So I thought he was going to be like, shit, this is not the guy. And he was going to try and calm people down, which, you know, wasn't working. So I was picturing him like firing his gun in the air and just everyone like freezing and him being like, this is not the guy. Look what we've become.
Right.
And just kind of like ending all of that.
And he's still out there, so let's get the fuck out here.
Yeah, he's still out there, so let's get the fuck out there and find the real Michael Myers. But instead, they had Tommy Doyle double down on his ignorance of Michael Myers and say, well, how do we know it's not him? He always wears a mask. It's like, I'm sorry, but like, yeah, faces will change. Body shapes are not. It's like the exact opposite body type from Michael Myers. Like that to me was so unbelievable. I was like, okay, this is just, I can't buy it. I can't buy it at all.
What did you say? You said, I didn't think that anybody would believe that Danny DeVito.
Danny DeVito. Well, and again, it's not that, you know, I want your audience to understand that it's not that there are political or social commentary themes. Horror has had that for decades, but sometimes it's all in the execution.
Exactly.
And Halloween Kills, for me and for a lot of people, the pacing of the film was disjointed, and
Yes.
it just was, everything was just I wasn't believing what they were selling. And I just want to I don't know if you are going to do this. Are we going to talk about the dialogue, or are you
Go for it. I don't really have anything
Okay.
written about the dialogue other than like
I would love
a
to.
couple of the lines that I've mentioned where I'm just like, that's just
The
doesn't make sense.
dialogue in the hospital scene is, and you know, people often say, well, yeah, but dialogue in horror movies have always been bad. Yes, in a campy horror movie, you expect campy dialogue. When you are trying to present a movie as serious like Halloween Kills and you introduce campy dialogue, it really stands out. It was very theatrical. The characters were responding in ways that told me they were self-aware that they're in a Halloween movie, you know, and that's a problem. I mean, I can't tell you. I mean, people often refer to, and rightly so, how many times the phrase "evil dies tonight" was said, and it was overdone. It was said just way too many times and too passionate. Evil dies tonight. It's like, gee, calm down. Where is that anger coming from? And how many times somebody said 40 years ago? I mean, it was like, you don't have to say it. We know you can say it once, but you know, I think Tommy said it twice. Cameron said it once. Laurie said it a couple of times. Brackett said it. Like the amount of times somebody says, well, 40 years ago I was, you know, and just I remember when Tommy burst into Laurie's hospital room and all of a sudden he's got like an accent. And he's like, Laurie, 40 years ago, you helped me. He's like, I don't know where he's from, but it's like he's got this accent. He's like, you protected me, so I'm going to protect you. He's
a bro from the streets. Of Haddonfield.
and then she's like, okay, well, Tommy, go. And he hesitates. Oh, it was cringe. It was just, I was like, oh, this doesn't feel this. There's no other way of saying it. It felt like acting.
Yeah.
And because they were overselling it. When you have certain dialogue that is given to a classically trained actor like Donald Pleasance, he can make things like, I watched him for 15 years, sitting in a room, staring at a wall, looking past him, looking at this night, inhumanly. He can make certain things, like nobody talks like, I met this 6-year-old child, this blank, pale, emotionally black. Nobody talks like that, but he understands the nuances and the moments of pausing and the breathing room to kind of, stretch that out to make it sound like it's really coming from, he's actually really thinking that. I don't know if there's an actor in this movie that can do that. There were some actors that were given these kinds of speeches that I'm just like, you're not. It feels.
And Donald Pleasance did that drunk. I heard he was drunk the entire time he filmed.
Well, I don't know if he was drunk on the first movie. He certainly was drunk on the later.
Oh yeah,
sequels.
I heard the first movie. I just watched.
Really?
There's a documentary on Netflix called "The Movies That Made Us."
Oh, okay.
The documentary series, and they do a Halloween one that
helped him.
watched after Kills, and
Yeah.
they were saying that he was like, this movie's bullshit. So he would just get
He was.
drunk on set and like do his lines, but they're like, he nailed them.
Oh,
Yeah.
of course.
I don't know
Yeah,
if
he
it was
did.
that he was. I don't know if it was that he was drunk in every scene, but there was, I think, one in particular where he was, but he probably was, in other ones as well.
He might have
Yeah,
been.
I'm sure he was. But so it's the dialogue, especially in the hospital stuff, is not all of it, but there are some performances from some of the characters that are way over the top. They're selling it too hard. I don't know how much time they had or didn't have, but as a director, I would have been like, whoa, I would have gone over there and said, can we pull that back a bit? That's just a little too much. I don't think we need to go that far with it. And it just made me, and I'm just, and everybody has noticed it. I mean,
Yeah.
Sharon, you've liked the movie more, say, than I do, but you noticed it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like everybody has noticed this. Whether you like the movie, love the movie, hate the movie, everybody's noticed this, like, boy, they're really hitting that home there with that. It seems a little like you don't need to go that far. I mean, you don't have to, very theatrical, very stage play like, very like, oh, I'm in a Halloween movie. I need to sell this. 40 years ago, I knew. It's like, to pull it back. You don't need to,
And what
like,
did
what are you doing?
What did you think of the conversations between Laurie and Hawkins?
I actually,
Okay.
that's what I wanted to get to
Sure.
because really quick though, before we do, Dave, I just want to say I chickened out, but I saw on Twitter like a week or so ago, you posted something that said like, what was your favorite kill in Halloween Kills? And
I
people
did.
were commenting, and I almost commented and said, most female agency, specifically Laurie Strode's, but then I didn't want to like bring on any fanboy anger, but I have, well, I'll let you go. But I would like to talk about that conversation.
Well, here's the thing. This may surprise you, but that conversation, from a purely performance standpoint, was the best thing in that hospital.
Hands down. Yep.
Because Will Patton, as I said at the beginning of your show today, is a terrific character actor. Jamie Lee Curtis is a terrific actress. She really is. She's good. And as you know, acting is reacting. 9 times out of 10, you are only as good as who you're playing off of. And if you could be a terrific actor, but if you're playing off of actors that are not that great, that can affect you. I mean, you might be able to bring them up, of course, but when you get two actors that are solid, like Will Patton and Jamie Lee Curtis, and they're able to play off each other, the nuance and the breathing room and the way they're talking to each other, I was like, this feels real. This feels like a real conversation, that they're thinking the words themselves and they're talking about this. I actually liked that. I wish we could have seen more of that. I wish the hospital would have been more centric around that, and maybe Hawkins and Laurie, and maybe Hawkins and Laurie both try to get up and sneak out of the hospital, or maybe, because I don't know, there's just something, there was strength to that scene. And so now, and what they were talking about, it didn't bother me. I mean, I guess she was, obviously Laurie has had a life in between 1978 and 2018 when this film also takes place. So, she was just kind of, I mean, that I sort of suspected that when Frank was introduced in 18, and that she called him by his first name, not Deputy Hawkins or Hawkins. I mean, when Frank shows up at the house and Laurie's there with the gun, he's like, Laurie, which makes sense. He would call her Laurie. And then she comes around the corner. It's like, Frank, what are you doing here? Or something. It's like, well, clearly there's a relationship there. Not necessarily a romantic one, but clearly first name basis. She knows him, right? It's not just like, oh, hi, officer. It's not like that. So, I like that was expanded on. It made sense. They're like, oh, it's this. Oh, okay. That made sense. So
What
it
did you
didn't bother
think
me.
about him saying Michael Myers isn't after you?
Right. That's what I was kind of getting to.
I
as
like
well.
that. I like that because that goes back to the whole point of the reason they negated all the sequels in the first place. And that's not to say that Michael, when he's standing up against her, like in 18, when they're in her bedroom with all of the mannequins and whatnot, and he shoves her up against the wall and he does that little head tilt that he does or whatever, and he does that a couple of times with her. That's not to say that he doesn't recognize her. That's not to say that somewhere in his subconscious, he's not thinking, interesting. I think, are you know what I mean? Maybe,
Yeah.
but I like that because it goes back to the whole point of what this new series was supposed to be. Negate the brother-sister arc. Michael is just, you happen to just be somebody that was just in his path. And although you've been obsessing about him for 40 years, he's been locked up for 40. He doesn't know who the fuck you are. He hasn't thought about you in 40 years. And that, I wish that was more of the angle of this movie. Because that is something there that is like, really focus on that. Like, imagine that from a character perspective. Maybe she finds that out earlier on in the film, and now there's this whole coming to age. Imagine that, because it's part of her what? Identity.
Exactly.
And when you strip that away, Laurie, he ain't after you. You're taking her identity away, and it makes it seem like she's wasted 40 years of her life. She could have gone off and got married and had kids and had a good, who knows, but she's been obsessed because she feels this was personal, and it wasn't personal. And that's something that I think it's too bad that wasn't the crux of this movie. Of course, you have other things in there too, but that really wasn't more the focus, because that's motivation for a character.
Yes. 100%. And I will say, back to your point about the acting in that scene, Jamie Lee Curtis nailed that realization. I mean, she was crestfallen and defeated. But that, again, when that reveal came, I thought it was a really interesting idea. And like you were saying, that would have made a great movie, but it felt more like it was robbing Laurie of something, and not in a character growth kind of way, because we spent, again, 5 minutes on it and then moved on.
Right. Well, exactly. And it almost felt like it was just there to remind you that, hang on a second, in a few moments, you're going to see Michael take 6 shots to the chest. But we just want to let you know that he's still a man and that it's not personal. We have to remind you about the, of this. And it felt shoehorned in a bit. And then they kind of, it should have been sort of part of the plot, part of the whole thing. That's what Halloween Kills really should have been about, was Laurie. And although she did discover it in this film, it would have been nice. Maybe maybe Hawkins, again, this, I say this, because it's just a different creative choice. Maybe, you would have had to have started the movie differently. You would have had to have written it a bit differently, but maybe Hawkins, hypothetically, maybe Hawkins is already at the hospital when Laurie gets wheeled in. So, you can start that conversation earlier. You can plant that seed earlier. So you can kind of have those moments or whatever. But then again, you probably know this, Sharon, it's probably not realistic to have a man and a woman in the same hospital room anyway in that kind of a scenario. So,
you know what? It could also be, if the hospital's small enough, and it's overcrowded by, it's for room, just to have space to put patients. It's totally feasible that you could put them together, and I don't think there's like a hard, fast rule about like you can't, but I
think too, she had one of the few rooms that had room for another person and was relatively safe.
Yeah, it's a minor thing. It's a minor thing, and it's a movie. It's a minor thing. But I will say that hopefully Halloween ends, because if you're going to go all the way, and if Halloween ends, hopefully Halloween Ends will be all about this coming to terms with realizing that it's not a nice thing to say, but you've wasted the last 40 years, because now there's reason for it. I mean, you're suffering with post-traumatic stress. I mean, it's not warranted. It's not warranted. But that moment that you realize, the truth of something can add a whole different layer of PTSD, can add a whole different layer of psychological trauma. I mean, she's somebody that could go really down a dark path now once she realizes that, oh my God, this isn't exactly, that's a whole different ballgame right
And
there.
when she realizes that her daughter's dead because of it.
Put a pin in that. The only thing that I was just so disappointed, because I hear that, maybe the next movie is going to tackle that. But I also, like you were saying earlier about kind of relying on tropes, and that can be lazy. I think that this movie should be able to still stand on its own. Empire Strikes Back is a great movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
It also is a big
say
cliff.
it's the best.
It's a huge cliffhanger.
I think it's the best.
I think it's the best
I do
too.
Yeah.
So
there you go. Hey.
So I have a question about this scene with them, and it's probably because I'm just misremembering things or just remembering them differently, whatever. But so Hawkins reveals that he stopped them from killing, and that's why he believes he as the one who has to stop it. Mm-hmm. So is he saying that Michael Myers is actually after Hawkins?
No, he just feels
just
guilty.
saying he feels guilty.
He feels guilty, and he feels like he's the one who needs to end it.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. He feels responsible for, number one, shooting his buddy in the neck by accident.
Yeah.
And number two,
not ending it when he could have.
Right. And not, and I don't know how I feel. I think this was a little unnecessary. Dr. Loomis standing there over Michael, about to shoot him in the back of the head. It's like the cops. I mean, let's not forget that Dr. Loomis is still a civilian. Why are they letting this doctor on the verge of shooting Michael, execution style in the back of the head?
It was 1978.
That's true.
Things
were
different.
That's true. Small town. But Hawkins prevented him from doing that. So he feels that perhaps if I had let him shoot him in the back of the head, none of this would have happened. So he does feel a responsibility there. And Will Patton plays that sympathetic character very well. And I think he should have been. Maybe now we understand why he wasn't. Perhaps he wasn't exactly the best shot. But I still think he should have been the chief. The sheriff. I think Barker was, and this is no disrespect to the actor, we're talking about the character, which has nothing to do with him in terms of the writing. I think Sheriff Barker was a useless stooge in Halloween 18, and I think he's a useless stooge in Halloween Kills. I think he's inept, incompetent, and I don't understand how he's the sheriff at all. He's way out of his league. He can't gain control over anything. Even in the first movie, he's laughing off when Hawkins says, "It's Michael Myers, babysitter murders 40 years ago." Hawkins is like, I'm thinking, you're the sheriff. Like, to your point, if you're the sheriff, like, which way is it? Do people know about this or do they not know about this? And if we're supposed to take this as seriously as we do, then Barker should have been immediately, because he knows Hawkins was there that night. Mm-hmm. So he should immediately take this extremely seriously. He should be like, Halloween, I think he says something like, Michael Myers, what the hell are we supposed to do? Cancel Halloween?
Yeah.
And walks away. And it's like, why are you how do you not, like, that doesn't, I think Hawkins should have been the sheriff. It makes sense in terms of a progression. He's been on the force for 40 years. He's been the sheriff for the last, say, like 15 or something. And but now maybe he wasn't because he wasn't a good shot. I don't know. But then again, why is he still a deputy then? I mean, that doesn't really make much sense either. But anyway, yeah, no, it was a good scene. I wish there was more of that. There was there were pockets of moments where they nailed it, but I can't help but feel that there's an agenda. Now, when I say agenda, I don't mean in the political left, right, leaning, all that kind of stuff. I'm not talking about any conspiracy theories here. I just mean that I think there clearly is an agenda in terms of the message that they want to convey. And I think it's always easier when you weave that into subtext rather than being overt in a slasher movie, because especially with a movie where there's a lot going on, because you got to spend so much time hammering that home, and it just kind of ruined the pacing.
Yeah, and the execution of how I feel did not pull that off in Kills makes me dubious about the next movie, quite frankly.
Yeah, it would for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah.
Although it could be a completely different film from either, and as you said, they were doing some rewrites, so who the fuck knows?
Sharon's bang on. I mean, it could be a situation where, again, the tone changes, and now maybe it is more in line with Halloween 18 in terms of its tone and its execution. It's more serious, grounded. Maybe it's more of a courtroom drama or something. I don't know.
Maybe they brought Rob Zombie in for some rewrites.
Maybe he did. I just want to know, where has Michael been for 4 years? I don't want him to be caught only to escape again. Maybe he's caught and he's thrown into Smith's Grove Sanitarium, and the whole place, and then the whole film takes place there. And he busts out of his cell and he starts killing people in the sanitarium, and then a thunderstorm rolls on in with lightning and stuff. I'm telling you, that's what I would do.
They should have consulted with you.
I just think that he's going to be hanging out in a cabin with like a 6-pack.
All right. should we discuss the final showdown?
Very nice.
Okay.
That's great. I love it.
All right. So we have
Which,
the
by
final,
the way, was
yes.
not what. Which, by the way, is always mistakenly thought of to be in Rocky IV, and it was not in Rocky IV. The final
Oh, see,
countdown.
I only know it. I have not seen any of the Rocky movies.
Oh,
I
okay.
only know it from Arrested Development.
It's
Okay,
Job's
there's
theme song.
It's a great tune, but there's
It is.
there's another tune in Rocky IV that sounds so similar that everybody thinks the final countdown is in Rocky. I think that's the way it is. I don't think it's in there. Maybe it's the other way around.
If you say so, I'll say sure because I haven't
Okay,
seen it.
all right, yeah, say sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But it makes sense though. No, it's a great tune.
All right. So we're at the Myers house for the final showdown. Honestly, I didn't have any problems with what went on in the house. At first, I was a little confused by Karen's motivations, but then once I realized that she lured Michael Myers into a trap, I was like, oh, okay, like that. I'm down for this. But then
It all goes to shit.
I'm like, okay, how?
Say it, Sharon. Say it.
What the
You can
fuck
say
is
it.
going on with Michael Myers? Like, all right, this just makes no sense anymore.
You'll feel
like,
better when you get it out.
He
Yeah,
just,
yeah,
he
you will.
just, like, is there any? How is he gonna die in the third one? He's just immortal. Like, what is gonna? I'm kind of at a loss for words.
Well-
the ending. It fell apart for me up until that point when I was like, oh yeah, they're getting their revenge. They're beating the shit out of him. They're getting their anger out. And then it just fell apart from there. So
Well, I was like, okay, way to throw in a really super clunky commentary on mob mentality. Like, that did not work. But also, again, like, as we keep saying, really glad I didn't give a shit about any of those new characters earlier because now they're all dead and it doesn't matter anyway.
So unfortunate.
I will say really quick, there was an interview with Vulture.com with Judy Greer, who plays Karen, and she talked about
speaking
the
of
scene.
Arrested Development.
Oh, yes, because she's also an Arrested Development alum.
Oh,
but
okay, cool.
she talked about the moment where she takes Michael's mask and like lures him outside with it. And Dave, you probably know, but the gentleman who like owns the mask and is responsible for it,
Yes.
she was saying that like literally the second they would yell cut, like even if it was 2 seconds in between scenes, he would not let her hold it. And she was like, but I just want it. Can't I just like put it like kind of on my face and take a selfie? And he would like, she was like, he would not. He was totally serious
He was
about
not
it.
having
That's
it.
It was
probably
intense.
Christopher Nelson. Yeah. Yeah. I would imagine that would have been him. Well, it's true. I mean, it's the reason for that wouldn't be personal to Judy Greer. It'd be anybody. It's because they only have a few on set, right? So they'll have like what's called a hero mask, which is the one that's used, in most shots, but they'll have like a stunt mask. They probably had about, I don't know, maybe between 3 and 5 masks maybe. But if they did that, if they let everybody do that, just kind of hang on a bit, it could rip, it could tear, and they don't have the time. I mean, they're in the middle of shooting, so
Yeah.
they don't have the time to create another one. I mean, that sometimes could take weeks.
Oh,
So,
I used to be a stage manager. No eating in costume. I get
That's
it.
That's
Yeah.
it. That's it. It's same thing. So yeah, no. As soon as it cut, he comes in and just goes, "Thanks, I'll just take that. Thank you." He walks away. Yeah, but it'd be like that for anybody. After the movie's done, she should have been like, "Can I get a selfie with that?" Then maybe he probably
Right.
would have said yes.
All right, so let's hear your I did my little rant. I'm sure you have something much more concrete to say. And I have to say, I did not listen to any of like your YouTube videos or anything. So I'm going to have to watch those because I wanted to go into this interview with you
Same.
or this discussion with you cold. I didn't want anything you said previously
Cool.
to like sway us either way. So
Same.
I
Yeah.
understand.
this is all new to me.
Both of you just cleared up a little bit. You're less pixelated.
It happens occasionally.
Yeah, you get a
Am I
little
less
less.
pixelated? I'm probably still pixelated.
A few times you were, then it goes
okay.
back.
Okay, then it goes back. I will say this.
Are you
so,
really sensitive about your pixelatedness?
Well, I mean, no, I'm just generally a pixelated person. Like I said at the beginning of the show, I'm actually, if we met in real life, you'd be like, hey, you're kind of pixelated a bit. I don't know what's going on
Do
there.
these pixels make me look fat?
Yeah.
Are you like Dr. Katz, that cartoon with the squiggle
Right.
vision?
Yes.
That's what you're like in real life?
100%. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. I have a filter on right now. Yeah. So I'll say this. The mob mentality was was a bit of a letdown. This whole beating the shit out of Michael Myers, why are they all taking turns? I mean, why are they not just, again, this comes back to character motivation. They should have all been attacking him at the same time. Why are you shooting him in the chest? Shoot him in the head. But then I don't know if I would have, if I want to preserve any sort of essence of realism, I understand he was shot at the end of the first movie, but that doesn't mean you have to continue to shoot him. I think I would have gone away with the shooting, but then again, you would think, well, why would they show up with anything but a gun? And this whole kind of like, so you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Karen, he's lying on the ground. Karen has the moment, and what does she do? She stabs him in the shoulder. Why didn't you stab him in the head? Why did you stab him in the neck? Why isn't somebody, and I know this might be sensitive for some because I get it, but why isn't somebody like stabbing him in the neck and trying to cut his head off or something? I mean, like, that's a little too much. I get it. But it's
No.
like, why,
Yeah,
where
no.
is this? But if you think about it from that perspective, like, where is this? Why are we just, and then of course, when he gets up and he has that fight with everybody, that was actually shot on a soundstage. And that's why it was cut the way it was, where everybody was kind of going up to him at once and he was taking them out in slow motion and stuff. They actually, according to Christopher Nelson, who was the special effects makeup artist who probably took the mask away from Judy Greer, the other day I heard on his podcast, he said that they had run out of time. The sun was coming up. We would have shot that on location in the street, because we shot some of it on location in the street, as you could see. But the moment Michael stands back up and starts to get his revenge on the mob, it's shot very differently, much more stylistically. And the reason
noticeably.
Right, because that was shot on a soundstage with black cloth all around them or whatever, with certain lights and whatnot, because that's how they had to do it. They ran out of time. And I didn't like the way it was shot. It was too stylized. It was too... slow motion. It was just, too stylized. I didn't think it was, I don't know, beating the crap out of Michael. Like, again, cool ideas, execution, I'm not crazy on. I also, again, this is a nitpick, but I also think it was unnecessary that Karen had to say, gotcha, or had to say gotcha again. I mean, let's not forget, this is the same night. She just said it to him 3 hours ago. So I don't, like, although it's a different movie separated by 3 years, in the film, it's the same night separated by maybe a couple of hours. So
Right.
to say that again is just kind of strange. Sheriff Brackett, when he says, hey, Michael, it's Halloween. Everyone's entitled to one good scare. I sat there and I thought, okay, fanboy Dave goes, that's so amazing. Because he said that in the first movie to Laurie Strode. My heart is full. My heart is warm. Writer takes over and goes, why the hell is he saying that? I mean, is that something he says every year? I mean, that was something that he said to Laurie in passing, 40 years ago. I didn't get the impression that it's something is that his thing? Like, how, sometimes our fathers will have like a thing they always say, and you're like, okay, Dad, I get it. Is that his thing? Like, does he go up to everybody all the time going, hey, Carol, it's Halloween. Everyone's entitled to one. Because, I mean, where does this...
Especially since his daughter was murdered on Halloween.
Right.
Here you are faced with your daughter's killer. I think you would have mustered up something better than to say something you said in passing 40 years ago. I get it. It's like, Dave, come on, it's just fan service. Yes, and maybe that's part of the problem, is that it's would he say that? Would Sheriff Brackett say that? Maybe you can have... I don't even think you have to have anybody say that, or maybe he says it kind of with a smirk to somebody else at the hospital or something, because there was a little joke that happened between them or something. You don't need to have him say it at that moment. He would have likely have said, I'm gonna fucking rip your head off, you piece of shit. Or,
Absolutely.
This is for fucking Annie, or something like that. Maybe he didn't want to swear. I don't know, but again, I know there are probably certain people that are listening going, yeah, but it works.
No.
It's so cool. And it's like, yeah, I get it. I totally get it on that level.
I do like the idea of him walking around town every year saying to random people.
Right. Because would he even remember that?
No.
I mean, I don't even know what I said to somebody 3 weeks ago.
He's going to hate Halloween forever because his
yeah.
daughter was murdered on that day.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
And
right.
I'm sorry, I got to say it. And it's not just my loyalty to the actress. I thought the Karen death was bullshit, but I also felt like it was so... This is the inconsistency part. Karen, throughout the 2018 film, yes, bitched about her upbringing and how her mother's crazy and how she had to learn how to use guns as a kid and la 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 la.
Right.
But then we see that clearly that training and that instinct survived and was drilled into her by Laurie for a reason, because of her killer move, well, not literally, but almost.
I know what you mean.
At the end of 2018.
Yeah.
So I did not. First of all, throughout the whole film, all Karen was doing was like running around and squawking and yelling at people, and then trying to protect Laurie during the mob scene. But then I just in no way believed, with everything going on, that she would go off by herself in this room and be vulnerable like that. And I'm not just saying this to sound like a smarty pants, but in that same Judy Greer interview, she did say, and I did notice this at the time, that if you notice the way Karen is killed, the way it's filmed, and specifically as she's like dead with her eye open, that they were intentionally doing an homage to Psycho. Because of course Janet Leigh is,
puts her hands up, and it's just kind of
Janet Leigh being, Jamie Lee Curtis's mom, etc.
Of course.
But Judy Greer's point as an actress was like, well, it's a horror movie and somebody's got to go. But I disagree. And I don't disagree, but I disagree with how they did it. And she deserved better. They all did. And that's what made me mad.
Right.
Okay. Now that I feel better now. Thank you. Dave, what did you think?
So yeah, Judy Greer's death, Karen's death, again, I understand what was happening there. I think some people feel that this is cinematic language, what's known as cinematic language. So I don't now, and maybe I'm wrong. I mean, maybe that, the writers can correct me, but I don't believe for one second that Karen actually saw 6-year-old Michael in the window looking down on her. That's for the audience. That's for us, because what's happening there is that Karen looks up to the window. Now, whether I don't agree with this of, being the ending, but what is happening? So Karen looks up to the window and she's reminded of what Hawkins was talking about in the hospital. And of course she was looking at herself in the mirror earlier, right? Almost like it was. And we know that mirrors and, symbolism are windows and doorways and, all that kind of stuff. Right. And so, I get it. Like it doesn't come out of nowhere in terms of her motivation, in terms of what was happening there. She does see that. And then she walks upstairs because she's never been in the house. So I would assume. So she wants to go in there and kind of look out the window and kind of, remember what Hawkins was saying. But again, it's just the writing all around is just not strong enough for me to buy it, and to believe that this character would do that. What are you? Are you a campy horror movie with cheesy dialogue? Or are you a drama with real serious political social commentary? And
maybe she went up to the room, but she would have at least had a gun or a sharp something with her. Or
you would think so. Well, somebody could say, well, but she didn't believe that. She thought that Michael was dead because she stabbed him in the back or whatever. And but then he suddenly shows up behind her, and there's this very stylized, death scene, and then she dies, and then it just cuts to black. And yeah, again, empty. I felt sort of empty with it. Now, the original ending was supposed to be an extension of that, actually. So that actually isn't the original ending. I think the original ending will be on the Blu-ray, if I'm not mistaken, I think. But there was actually probably about another minute or two after that. And what it was is, and this is actually better, and it's too bad that they changed it. Laurie calls Karen on her cell phone. And Karen's cell phone, she's dead. And Karen's cell phone begins to ring, or whatever, right? And Michael picks up the phone, like and he puts the phone to his ear. And Laurie's at the hospital, of course, right, on a payphone, I guess, or whatever. Do they even have payphones anymore? I think I think it was a payphone. And she's there, and all she hears is Michael breathing.
Oh, that's
and of course
badass.
she knows. She just knows instinctually. She knows. So that shot in the trailer.
I never watched the trailer.
No, I didn't either.
Okay, well, there's a shot in the trailer it's towards the end of the trailer, one of them. I think they're in a couple of TV spots as well, where it shows Laurie walking down the hospital hallway with a determined look on her face, and she's got the knife in her hand. Well, that never wound up in the film, because that's actually that's part of the original ending, where Laurie is like, "Now I'm coming for you, bitch," you know, whatever, right? And so that's where the film, and I think, I stand to be corrected, but I think the camera tilts down and shows the knife in her hand and sort of freeze frames there, cuts to black, like it freeze framed at the end of 18 on the knife in Allison's hand, because it's the same knife, right? I don't know why Allison still has that knife and it's not locked up in evidence, but she had it and she put it beside, when you need it, Mom, when you need it, right? Remember, she put it beside her bed. It's like, what, really? What the? It's kind of strange. His knife just sitting there, you know,
wrapped up in like a flannel or something.
Yeah. So that was, now again, you know, on paper, it's like, wow, I would love to see that. Maybe it wouldn't have, maybe it's not much of a difference. Maybe it would have been like, that's kind of better, but maybe we would, you know, we still would have been like, nah, you know, whatever. It's, you know, it's neither here nor there. But
I think I remember, so yeah, I didn't see the trailer, but I do remember reading something that mentioned this. And I think the reason why they took it out is because they didn't want audiences thinking that the movie picked up exactly where that left off, because it does start 4 years later.
Well, right. If they changed the third one to be 4 years later, then that maybe didn't work anymore.
Yeah. And actually, Judy Greer, I'm a fan, clearly, because I was, as soon as the movie ended, I Googled her and looked up all her interviews. But she, I totally lost my train of thought now. Sorry, guys.
It's okay. It happens to me all the time.
There's so much we're talking about and dealing with that I'm like, what is happening now? It'll come back to me at a random moment.
It's actually the discussion that's making us pixelated, not the actual technology. Yeah.
Our brains are working real hard.
That's it.
All right. So did I sway anyone? Did anyone's mind I didn't sway anyone, but did anyone's mind change during this discussion? Did anyone maybe, do you still hate it as much as...
I hate it more.
You do?
Well, that's what I was going to say, is that the ending that Dave just described, that would have been badass, and that would have changed it for me, I think, at least a little bit. Mm-hmm. I still don't like the film, but I am looking at it and thinking about it differently, having had this conversation with both of you.
I think I like it a little bit less after this conversation. I still think it was a lot of fun. I still like, it's you know, sitting in the seats, and as soon as you hear the opening theme song and the pumpkins on the screen, I was in it, and I was just like, I'm just gonna enjoy it. I had zero expectations. I know a lot of the things we talked about with, you know, the legacy cast and everything just being kind of like awkward and weird, but I still enjoyed it and thought it was fun. And yeah, I will probably have my opinion change again once Ends comes out and I can, you know, look at the whole thing as a complete film.
Quadrilogy.
Quadrilogy? Oh yeah, I guess if you're considering.
Do we know, are they going to go on? And is this now a new franchise?
I hope not.
Because I kind of am getting that impression.
I mean, you know, if the box office, it's all to do with the box office, right? And I hope not. I hope Halloween Ends is the end. My opinion hasn't changed. You know, I still feel the same way I do about it. I don't hate the movie. You know, I don't. I mean, but I certainly, I think why there are some people out there that really loathe it is because they had a certain I think it was delayed a year, so there was an extra year of hype, and there was a lot of expectations around it, and I didn't want to jump on that bandwagon. I wanted to go in and just sort of kind of temper my expectations, and I can definitely enjoy watching it, but it's disappointing to me that you have, and again, listen, as I've said many times, making movies is really, really hard. I've never made a Hollywood film. I've never had a budget that's, you know, I think it was 20 million they had. I mean, that'd be great. But certainly the principle of making movies professionally, which I've done, is extraordinarily difficult. Everything has to be firing on all cylinders when it comes to It's Me, Billy, we didn't have a studio breathing down our neck. We were able to make creative decisions on our own without somebody saying, you can't do that. You know what I mean? So I can only imagine what it's like. And certainly I believe that even for David Gordon Green and Danny McBride, because in some of the interviews that I've read with them and some of the things that they've said, you can kind of read between the lines. Yeah, there's some things that they are, maybe wanted to do that they couldn't do.
Interesting.
But that being said, it's a movie that is just missed opportunities again.
Yes.
You did this well, and if it's just kills and kill, but it's Halloween Kills. That's what it is. Well, then don't try to make it more than what it is. Don't try to be over political. Don't try to have this real drama narrative to it, because you won't be able to. It's not. It's like it doesn't know what movie it wants to be.
Exactly.
And I can't take you seriously and then laugh hysterically at the next minute. I mean, I can't, like in Friday the 13th Part 4, there's that line where, they're always referring to Crispin Glover's, is that his name? Yeah, I think it's his name.
Yeah.
Yeah. His character is a dead fuck, right? And it's kind of funny, but the whole movie's like that. The whole movie is campy and it doesn't take itself seriously. I can't have these, overly this sensational stuff in with something that's trying to be. I just didn't think it didn't know what it didn't know what it wanted to be.
I think that's where Rob Zombie was successful. He was a fan of the original. He made his own version. He didn't try and make it anything but his vision.
Listen, let me tell you this. I am not a fan of Rob Zombie's 2 Halloween films. I do not like those movies. However, you have to give credit where credit is due. He made them his own.
Yes.
And it does. Yeah, I know. The mask and the horse and the thing and the unicorn or whatever. I get all that. I get it. It's not for me. And I'm going to crawl over there and skull, fuck you, bitch. And I get all that. It's like, what the hell am I watching here? But, it's his own. There were no pacing issues. There were no, writing issues in terms of in its own universe. It's not like it was trying to be this movie 1 minute, that movie the next, this movie 1 minute, that movie the next. It was consistent the way through. And you got to give credit where credit is due. Both Rob Zombie's films are better made movies structurally, script-wise, pacing-wise than Halloween Kills.
I'd agree. I know Sharon might be on the fence about that.
That warms my heart a little bit to hear you say that, because I know you don't like those movies. So.
Oh, I don't. But again, I'm not talking about it from like a story perspective or a creative decision. I'm like, that's not my Michael Myers. I don't want to. I think it's completely unnecessary to have his backstory and to be so vulgar with it and to all this kind of stuff. Yeah, that's not. I think it's garbage. I don't like that. But structurally, they're consistent. With Kills, it's not. I mean, Kills is more in line with my type of Michael, but it's just, 18's a better movie in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. And pick maybe 5 things and go with it, as opposed to trying to jam pack every single event into like a 2-hour movie.
Yeah. I agree. It's too bad. Because there was some good there. Like I said, that first 15 minutes was like, ooh, this is interesting. You got Hawkins survived, and then we get the flashback, and Michael looked good, and that Loomis shit, holy fuck, that was great. And then the dog, and then, and then the way he comes out of the cabinet and attacks what's his face there, and the stuff. And it's like, this is really interesting. And then, and even the firefighter moment, it's like, oh, this is really good. It's the hospital stuff.
Yeah, it should have been a short.
yeah, in my opinion, but
All right, well, Dave, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking with us again. Pleasure as always, and we'll probably do this after Halloween ends, because
for sure. I love you guys. I think this is great. Thank you for having me on. I love chatting. Anything you want to chat about, I'm here.
And please let our listeners know where they can watch It's Me, Billy. Also, where they can find you on social media and YouTube. Anything else you want to say or promote, feel free.
Well, you can find me on YouTube at just Dave McRae. McRae is MCRAE. You can find me on Twitter at The Voice Man. Man has 2 N's, so at The Voice Man. Instagram, it's just Dave McRae 79. And Facebook, or I guess we should call it Meta now. Facebook
God, don't
is
even
called.
start.
I know. You can take that out, Spencer.
Nope.
Facebook is many things, Dave McRae. And then It's Me Billy you can find on YouTube and Vimeo. If you're going to watch It's Me Billy on like a big screen like your TV or a projection screen or something like that, we recommend Vimeo just because the compression is better there. But if you're watching it on like your phone or your tablet or whatever, you can watch it on YouTube. It's Me Billy. It should be the first thing that pops up, I think. And things coming up. There is a thing that I'm working on with Bruce, but we can't talk about it yet.
Okay.
All right. Well,
we'll be anxiously
Awaiting.
awaiting news, and we'll just start picking random movies and be like, "Hey, Dave, let's schedule a monthly conversation about movies like this movie, or what? Pick a different one every month or something."
Yeah, it'd be fun. I'm totally down. Let me know.
awesome.
But I'm not kidding about wanting a whole reenactment of the original Halloween with you doing all the voices. It would be an audio drama.
Oh my God. Can you imagine?
Yes, that's why we want it.
Yeah. People have asked me though to do things like that. And I'm like, oh my God, that's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It'd be fun. It would be fun.
You have 1 year until next Halloween to do
That's
it.
true. You know what? And you can download the script. Like you just Google Halloween 78 script or whatever, and it pops up. Like you can totally do it. I could just read from the script.
Yeah,
So-
just do a couple lines at a time. Just edit it all together.
I was going to say, though, do you need to read from the script, though?
Oh,
Well,
Probably not. Which is not, I'm not, that's
hang
not
on a sec. What's the first line? Hang on. We are alone, aren't we? Michael's around someplace. Take that thing off. Let's go upstairs. Okay. I believe those are the first lines in the film. If I'm not
Wow.
Okay,
mistaken.
you know what? This has to happen. I'm sorry.
think-
That was awesome.
Can we start a Kickstarter?
that's awesome.
I think so. The 1 minute man comes down the stairs and he's gone.
A 1 minute man.
I don't even think it was a minute. It's pretty quick. But I love how he's like, you going to call me tomorrow? Yeah. You promise?
Yeah,
Yeah. He didn't give a shit.
not at
Because somebody
all.
asked me too a while ago, do you think they should bring back him? I'm like, he didn't care. He didn't even care about Judith. He didn't even give a
No.
shit. So the
I didn't
answer's
care
no.
about him. Like,
Right.
No,
Yeah.
exactly. Who did?
I was upset that he didn't get killed too.
Yeah, it's too bad.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening to us. We will include the links to Dave's websites and also the links for where you can watch It's Me, Billy in our episode description. You can always write to us at whorestalkhorror@gmail.com with anything you want to share with us. Let us know your thoughts on Halloween Kills, whether you liked it, disliked it. You can also share any ghost stories, true crime stories, creepy stories, UFO stories, whatever you would like us to read on our show.
Please do subscribe to us, rate and review us on your streaming platform of choice. It does help us get more exposure and kind of pushes us up in the numbers there, so we can keep the show going, and we like doing that. If you're able to, please join our Patreon so you can get early access to episodes, see exclusive posts, and maybe even get some cool, fun stuff in the snail mail. Please be kind to each other out there. No mob mentality, crazy. Even if it's Mike Myers, no, not appropriate. But really, be safe. And as always,
Thanks for getting creepy with us. Sharon, you want a beer?
Oh my God.